Hebrews 10. Can you believe it? Hebrews 10. It's been a journey. 3 more chapters to go. 11, 12, 13. I hope it's been a good journey for you thus far. I know I have just enjoyed walking through the book of Hebrews as the author has taken us step by step through words inspired by the Holy Spirit. And as we begin this morning, I'll begin with a little bit of a disclaimer or trigger warning, if I can. I don't usually begin that way, but what I'm about to share may invoke feelings or reactions that may cause you to check out, okay? But I want to encourage you to stay with me because there's a point to all of it. And I want you to know, in no way am I trying to advance or persuade anyone politically. That should give you a hint, okay? And in no way am I attempting to do that this morning, but rather I am trying to paint a picture that I hope will help us better comprehend the circumstances that we are in and how we should respond to them. As I was preparing and getting ready for this message some weeks ago, there was an event that happened that was all over the news in Butler, Pennsylvania, where the former president of the United States was shot. I never thought that would happen in my lifetime. Some of you, it may have happened before in your lifetime. I didn't think it ever happened in my life. That was whoa, that blew me away. It was an attempted assassination that ultimately failed. And since that time, you know as well as I do that the news and social media and just stuff has been flooded with what has gone on with that event. And there's been stories that have been used to both propel the former president's candidacy and diminish it. I've seen pictures of the former president surrounded by Secret Service agents pumping his fist into the air to spur people on to fight for their country, the American flag kind of waving in the background in such a way as to inspire hope and patriotism. And then at the same time, I've seen that image put next to another image of Hitler in a similar fashion so as to instill fear in people in a way that says, if you vote for this person, this is who you're voting for. In recent days, I've seen videos and derogatory pictures and remarks of Vice President Harris being shared over social media to make her look stupid, unintelligent, and incompetent. I've heard and witnessed heated arguments as to why she shouldn't be the nominee. And honestly, I probably don't need to share too much more with you because you hear it, right? You watch it. You're caught up in the conversation, right? It's happening in your families. It's happening with your coworkers. Everybody is talking about it. I mean, some of us, we're actually probably avoiding certain places. And we're probably avoiding certain family members or certain friends right now. Honestly, it could be that even as I'm speaking this morning, you've kind of checked out or you don't want to listen. And it's because we're in a place or we're in a season of unrest. We're in a season of unrest. And this isn't only on a national scale, right? So let's just keep things in perspective here. It's also on a global scale, right? We've seen like riots happening in the UK. We've still got Russia and Ukraine going on. We've got the conflict between Israel, Iran, Hamas, and Hezbollah. I mean, just look at what happened with the stock market. I don't even know if anybody pays attention to the stock market, but I mean, woo, right? It's been a roller coaster. And it's easy to see in all of this that there is a growing sense of fear. And if you're not aware, fear can be a powerful motivator. Fear can be a powerful motivator, directing people and us to do and react and respond to people in ways that ordinarily we would never do. To act and speak and talk and respond in ways that we would never imagine. And it's all driven by fear. And it's significant because, we go back to our little house church in Rome, of whom the letter of Hebrews is being written to. And we also notice a similar season of political and social unrest in their environment. For later readers of this letter, it would be under Emperor Trajan. Right? Christianity would be illegal, forcing Christians to leave and disperse from the empire. The Romans saw followers of Jesus as disruptive to the daily ongoings of society. For instance, some Christians wouldn't eat meat because it was sacrificed to an idol, and a lot of the different businesses and places where they would work together in guilds and those kinds of things to make a living. Right? It was required that you would pay homage to a pagan god or an idol or something like that, a particular deity of a guild, in order to participate in the commerce that was going on. And you had to eat this meat. But Christians, at that time, they were like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to eat that meat because it would be participating in the worship of this pagan deity. And a lot of times that leftover meat was sold in the markets, and Christians wouldn't buy meat in the markets because it could have been used in worship. And so the meat sales went down. And so the businessmen and the people selling meat, they'd get upset because their meat sales would go down, right? They couldn't sell their meat. They couldn't make a living. They'd get frustrated at these believers who wouldn't purchase their commodity or their resource. It disrupted society. I mean, we see this in the book of Acts. When Paul's traveling and he's trying to point people to the one true God and away from false gods and false idols, and all the business people that are making images out of silver that represent foreign and pagan gods and those kinds of things, they're frustrated because if people turn to Jesus, they're not going to buy their idols anymore. And then they're going to go out of business. Rome was a very pagan society, and Christianity was disrupting that norm. Followers of Jesus were disrupting that norm. So to be a Christian could elicit or create this sense of fear that would cause these believers to respond in fear, or maybe cause them to be a little bit more apathetic about their faith because they could get in trouble. There would be a consequence. Or maybe cause them to, kind of associate or align with Judaism, because it's, a little bit more respected and it's been around a little bit longer, or at least thought to be so. But the point is, there's this sense of fear. Historical documents will tell us later on that in a letter from Emperor Trajan to Governor Pliny, he instructs Governor Pliny to deal with those accused of being Christians in this way. Have them brought before the magistrates, and if they offer a prayer to a Roman god or to Caesar after being accused of being a Christian, well, then they can be pardoned. But if they don't offer that prayer, have them punished, which a lot of times meant executed. So again, these people in this, they're reading this letter, whether earlier or later, they're reading this letter and they're familiar with unrest. They're familiar with uncertainty. The author of Hebrews is familiar with unrest. And in chapter 10, verse 19, they begin this shift from this theological argument and discourse that we've been engaging in of Jesus being greater than the greatest, greater than prophets, greater than priests, greater than kings, even emperors, to now that Jesus is greater, how should we respond in the environment that we're in this climate of unrest, in this climate of fear? That's the question that's being posed. How do we respond in climates of unrest? I want us to pay attention, because not only do we see huge implications for them and their response, but that also translates to today and when we're experiencing unrest and we're not at peace, how also we should and can respond. Chapter 10, verse 19, therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled and cleansed us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And if we can pause right there, there's some key words that I want us to notice, that I want us to pick up on, some key language. If you remember last week's message, the author is still emphasizing the access that we have to Jesus. That's what we're reading here, right? We still have this access to Jesus. Remember the illustration about the movie theater and being as close as you want type thing? That they're still emphasizing that. We have this access to Jesus through Jesus. The curtain into the Holy of Holies, God's presence in the temple, has been torn in two, so we have access to him. So the exhortation here is because we have access, because we now have access through faith in Jesus, his death and resurrection, to draw near to God. That's still being emphasized. Draw near to God and hold on to the hope that we have in Jesus. Now, they've made that switch, because this is how we are to respond in the climates of uncertainty or unrest that we find ourselves in. A lot of times we want to go hide and run and find someplace safe, but the scripture's saying here, draw near to God. Draw near to Jesus in those circumstances. The language in verse 14 of this chapter, for by one sacrifice he has made perfect forever those who are being made holy, tells us that Christ's sacrifice on the cross has made us holy. Now that word doesn't mean that we're perfect and will live perfectly from here on out, because we have placed our faith in Jesus. That's often what we're tempted to think, right? And we become a follower of Jesus, and then it's like, well, why can't I do any better? Like, why am I still struggling with this? But the point is, because Jesus has paid for our sin, we're now in a place where we can approach God. We can come to him. We don't have to wallow in our guilt of, well, I'll never be any better. I'll never get past this. I guess this is just the way that I am. Poor me. I'm too off. We don't have to wallow in our guilt anymore. You don't know what I've done. I'm not good enough. But with a sincere heart, with a broken and contrite or remorseful spirit, we can come to God and draw near to him, because Jesus has dealt with our sin problem. He's paid that penalty, and that gives us confidence to step into God's presence. That gives us confidence to draw near to him. It gives us confidence to come to him in a real and authentic way and say, God, this is what's going on in my life. God, these are my circumstances that I am. This is what I am struggling with. And I don't see a way forward in this situation. Some of us, we look around us right now and everything, all the hoopla that's going on in the world, and we're like, this is the best we've got. And we're like, I don't see a way forward. That's not God. God sees the way forward. And when we don't know how to move forward, when we don't know how to get past whatever it is that we're struggling with, be that in our family, be that personally, be that what's going on in society, this is the response. Hold on to Jesus. Hold on to the hope that we have in him. The Greek word there is katecho. All right, and it means to take hold of, to detain or retain. And I kind of think about it like this. You know, you ever go to shake somebody's hand and there's like nothing to it? I call that the dead fish hand, right? You go to shake somebody's hand and it's like a dead fish. It's weird, you know what I mean? How many of you know what I'm talking about? You like go to shake somebody's hand and there's just like nothing, right? Like when I learned to shake hands, like you go in there and you grip and you look in the eye, right? You go in there, you grip. Now, like guys, sometimes like we can grip firmly, and that's great. But like I'm like my mom, who's like 65 years old. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. My mom, who's older, right? I go to shake her hand, and I'm a little bit more gentle. I'm not going to grip it the same way I'm going to grip somebody else's hand because I don't want to crush her hand, right? So but there should be some firmness in the grip. It shouldn't be like a dead fish type grip. And you know, when I take my kids, you know, through the parking lot at Walmart, I don't hold their hand with like a dead fish type grip, like so they could just like slip away or shake it off. Man, I'm clinging on to that baby because I don't want them to like get distracted and be like, oh, look at this, and like, right, Mack truck. I don't want to, you know. I don't want them, I want them to get to the store safely. When we're in the woods or we're crossing a bridge or we're going through a creek or something like that, I'm hanging on to their hand. Not with a dead fish hand, not like limply so they can like just slide away and get out of my grasp, but I'm hanging on so we can get across that stream, so we can get through that river, so we can go over that bridge, lest they pull away. I'm not going to let the current or fall take them out of my hand. And it's the same way here, according to the author. Right? Social and political climates will change. Spiritual climates and environments will change. Family environments and workplace environments will change. Churches and communities can change. But no matter the unrest, hold on to the hope we have in Jesus. Not with a dead fish type grip, but firmly, so as to retain and keep it no matter the current situation in life. Dr. Guthrie points out a second Greek word here interpreted as unswervingly. You see that in the Message. It's the Greek word ekklines, meaning without wavering. You know what it is to waver? Right? You ever been up in a tree stand and the wind's blowing and you're going back and forth like that? I don't know. I've been there. It's a ride, you know? Or have you ever been out someplace and you're just not sure which way to go, what action to take, what to do? Right? That's wavering. That's being uncertain, right? And they're saying, hold on to the hope of Jesus without wavering. Put stock in Jesus, because climates rooted or established in fear, climates of unrest, they give rise to the temptation to loosening our grip on Jesus and maybe turning to something else, reaching for money or reaching for comfort or reaching or placing hope in someone or something else who is not Jesus. Climates of unrest can cause us to have dead fish or apathetic type hands or apathetic type faith. Like, why try? It's not going to get any better. What does it matter if I keep trying? Oh, it would be easier if just fill in the blank. And I might say this again, but listen, I want you to know Satan will do anything he possibly can to cause you to have a dead fish type grip. He'll do anything he can to disrupt your hope and pull you away and cause you to waver. It's who he is. It's what he does. We need to hold on to the hope that we have in Jesus. Hope has a name. That's what we're singing about. And so it begs the question, what are we hanging on to? What are we hanging on to? Where is our hope? Where are we placing it? Is it in our faith? Is it in Jesus? Is it in tradition? Well, things have always been this way, so they need to always be this way. Is it in our heritage, the family I'm from, the faith of my parents or grandparents, or even the community that I gather with? Is it in our nationality? Is it in our gender or ethnicity or education? Is it in our experience? Where's our hope? Is it in like pop culture and what everybody else says is right and wrong and acceptable and whether they approve or disapprove? Because if we're not hanging on to Jesus, friends, we're going to get swept away. That's just reality. And so practically speaking, like, how do we do that? Like, okay, hope has a name. I need to hang on to Jesus tightly, unswervingly, right? Don't loosen the grip, no dead fish hands, right? Practically speaking, how do we do that? What does that look like? Verse 24. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. I find this interesting. Because in the midst of their circumstances, in the midst of this little church's uncertainty and unrest, the author says something like, don't focus, I'm going to paraphrase here, don't focus on what you can't control. Focus on what you can control. You can't control how other people are going to respond to you. You can't control how, the powers that be, the laws that they're going to make, what they're going to do to you, and whether they say it's okay to be a Christian or not, or whether some type of behavior is okay to not, or whether you can do something. You can't control what they say to you and the influences that they have, but you can control how you respond in those situations. And so, church, if you're going to be persecuted, if you're going to be mistreated, if you're going to endure hardship, let it be while you're doing good. Right? Let it be while you're showing love to others. The word consider here means to think about. And the word spur means to incite, right? You think about spurs on like boots, right? Those little sharp, pointy things that you kick in to the horse or whatever to, spur them on to go, to move forward, to snap out of that comfortable walk that they're in, right? To irritate, to drive, to push, almost as if to move out of one's comfort zone. We're supposed to spur one another on. Don't just get comfortable with where we're at in our faith and our hope and our relationship with Jesus, but push one another out of our comfort zones. I think of the words of Jesus in Matthew 5:16, where he says, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Or the words of Peter in 1 Peter 2:12, live such good lives among those who don't know Jesus, that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day that he visits us. That they might say, thank God for that person and their presence in my life. I don't know what I would do without them. I don't know if I agree with them. I don't know if I believe like them, but thank God for them because they make a difference in my life. I was trying to figure out another word for spur, like for this particular point, but I couldn't. It was such a good word. Spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Anybody in 10th grade this morning? Any 10th graders here? I remember I was in 10th grade, back in my advanced algebra class. Let it be known, I hate algebra. Okay, just so we're clear on that. I was in my advanced algebra class, and I'm not sure if we were doing matrices or what, but I didn't quite have a handle on it, and the teacher was up front trying to teach the class how to solve these problems, how to work the way through them. And I remember trying to pay attention, and behind me, desk behind me, was one kid that just didn't know how to be quiet. Right? He's like trying to whisper. There's like people who know how to whisper and people who think they know how to whisper, but it's like they're like, I don't know, they think they're quiet, they're just loud. It's like you're not whispering. Like, I'm never going to take you out in the woods. You don't know how to whisper. Like what you think is quiet, it's not quiet. Like, the person across the room can hear us. This was that guy behind me. Some of y'all are looking at each other right now. This was the guy behind me. Like, he's trying to whisper. And, like, I'm trying to listen to the teacher so I can learn from the teacher. And he's behind me, and he's just talking. And finally, I can't pay attention. I turn around. I'm like, would you be quiet? Apparently, I offended him. Sorry for interrupting your conversation while I'm trying to learn. And I'll never forget it. Like, you thought I said something awful to him instead of asking him to be quiet, because he started threatening me. Just wait till we get out of class. I'm going to end you. Right? Wait till we get off the school property. Oh, it's going to be over, expletive, expletive, expletive. Right? I think he started talking about a knife and how many times he was going to stab me and slit my throat. To the point where I was a little bit concerned. I don't know if algebra's worth it. And I remember getting up with this sense of fear and leaving the classroom and nothing ever happened. But I know on that day I made an enemy. And weeks went by and weeks went by. And he's sitting behind me I don't have eyes in the back of my head, right? I'm waiting for the pencil to come in the back of my spine, And all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, Tim." I'm like, "Oh, buddy." Thump, 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 thump. And I turn around and he said, "Can you help me with this math problem? I don't understand." And I said, "Well, yeah." And I turned my chair around. And we worked through the problem, at which point he started to talk about how cool I was. He started giving me these cool nicknames. Just talking me up. "Hey, this is Tim over here. He's the boy," And suddenly, my enemy had become my friend. Listen to me. People may not like what someone believes. They may not believe that it's important to learn advanced algebra, okay? They may not believe that one actually has to be quiet in school to learn. They may not agree with the Bible. They may not look on, they may not have the same outlook as followers of Jesus have. They might not agree with how Christians are called to live. On a number of things, they could disagree with, education and politics and sexuality and business, many things that we observe in culture back then and in culture today. But when the church serves people like we're seeing encouraged here, in a way that expresses love and promotes their well-being, they have no choice but to stop and consider, why do they respond that way? I treat them so poorly. Why are they nice to me? Why do they care? Why do they do the things that they do? Why aren't they angry after how I've treated them? I'm not sure I agree with everything those people believe, but my life is better because they're in it. That's the kind of person I want in my life. And listen, I know there's a place for talking. I know that we need to give a reason for the hope that we have, but I kind of wonder what it would be like for the church to talk less and to love more. Right? I kind of wonder what that. You can read about it in 1 Corinthians 13. Right? They call it the love chapter. You hear it read at weddings all the time, where the Apostle Paul says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking." Here's the one I struggle with: it is not easily angered. Right? It keeps no record of wrongs. That's some good marital advice. But the context that passage is written in isn't about being married. It's about dealing with conflict. It's about how to move forward in an environment of unrest. How do you respond when people disagree with you? What to do in climates of difficulty? Spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Are we doing that? Are we doing that? Or are we concentrating on winning the argument and debating, fighting? Because again, Satan will do whatever he can do to get us to disagree with one another, to cause division, to keep others from coming to Christ. He'll do whatever he can do. How are we responding? Are we encouraging one another? Are we modeling for others Christ's love through our own behavior, through our attitudes and actions, setting the example at our workplace environments and with our families and in our churches? Because we are in a climate of unrest, and most likely the only way people who need to know Jesus are going to encounter him is if they see us acting like him. Not yelling and arguing about what's right and what's wrong, but by acting like him, by loving the way that he loved. Remember, Jesus, he was persecuted. He was mistreated. He died. They killed him. He could have called down legions of angels. And yet he modeled love. He served in his climate of unrest. Look at verse 25. Because we're going to spur one another towards love and good deeds. But then also pay attention to what this says. Not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as we see the day approaching. I think this is incredibly interesting. In climates of unrest, when we need to be holding unswervingly to Jesus, to the hope that we have in him, the instruction is to gather together and encourage one another. When things get hard, when they get difficult, when we're at points of disagreement, the instruction is not just kind of bury your head in the sand or go off on your own. The instruction is to gather together. And all the more so, right? When it's illegal for this house church to be a Christian, well, we better not go to church today because we could get caught. We could end up in jail, right? Somebody might slip up and, they might see me at this gathering and then, oh no, poor me. No, what's the instruction? Gather together. And all the more so as you see the day approaching. Right? Not just occasionally, not when we have time, not when it's convenient for you all, but more and more as the day approaches. Now, what is this day that the author is talking about? He's talking about the day of Christ's return. In other words, we should be anticipating, looking toward, hoping for the imminent return of Christ. And the more we look forward to it, the more serious we're about it, the more we should be gathering. The more we should be gathering and going. See, according to Guthrie, there were some who were a part of this house church who were abandoning their gathering together for worship on a regular basis. Whether that was from threat of persecution or the fact that Christ hadn't come back yet. Well, where is he? He's not here. I guess, it doesn't really matter if, I gather with the church or not. Or from apathy. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go this week. I feel like, it's just easier to remain where I am. But it's interesting here, the dynamic that Guthrie uses in his commentary, because he says that this term forsaking, don't forsake the gathering together, it's connected to Jesus' cry on the cross in Matthew 27:46. My God, why have you forsaken me? That actually connects back to the book of Psalms. But that's the word there. Why have you forsaken me? And it's being used here as a reminder according to Hebrews 13:5, which is actually a quote of Moses in Deuteronomy 31:6. God has said, right? God has said, here's where it ties in, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So if God's not going to forsake us, why should we forsake him? Even in times of unrest, even in times of difficulty, how could we abandon him and his promise by failing to gather together? And in New Testament times, this was regularly on the first day of the week. which was Sunday, the day Christ rose from the dead. Now, I'm not saying it's got to be Sunday, but in the scriptures we see a precedence for what gathering together regularly looks like. And it looks like this once a week. And the reason for its frequency is to encourage one another, to spur one another on toward love and good deeds like we've been talking about, especially in seasons of unrest. To come together and to celebrate the Lord's Supper, remind ourselves of who He is and that He's going to come again to worship with the body of Christ, and remind ourselves that this isn't all there is. Someday it's going to be over. It's going to end. Jesus is coming back. But until He comes back, let's keep going. And by gathering together, not only do we worship God, which is primary, but we also care for each other. We encourage one another. We pray for one another and with one another. And I'm not sure if we're aware of this, but it's awfully hard to pray with somebody when you're by yourself. It's awfully hard to encourage somebody when nobody's around you, when you're in isolation, if they're not present and you're not present. The other night, we're at Maddie's soccer practice. And the practice had just finished. And, you know, the kids, they're 7 and 8 years old. Their legs are still, like, super short. And they're tired of running. And they finished the practice. And like a good coach, he wants to build endurance. So they get done practice. And coach is like, run 2 laps around the field. Oh, groan. I'm tired. So they run. And that first lap, they did pretty good, right? But that second lap, man, once they started on that second lap, then comes the walkers. And, I'm tired. And, you know, as they're walking and they're tired, you know, we parents, we start to cheer, come on, let's go, you can do it, finish strong. And suddenly they realize, oh, that's my dad, that's my mom. They're cheering for me. I don't know those other people, but they're cheering too. And then they start to kind of pick up the pace, and you see them kind of start passing one another. And when one passes one, the other person's like, well, they're not passing me. And so, you know, they run a little further, and they're encouraged. And, you know, pretty soon, you know, they make it all the way around because someone's cheering them on. And their faces are a little bit brighter. But then there's this one kid. Everybody's finished. Everybody's done. And he's still got half the lap to do. And it's like, why try? What does it matter anymore? I'm not going to beat anybody. Like, I'm the last one. And you can see him. He's kind of staring at the ground and just moping along type thing. Everybody else is there. Yeah. And Ashley gets after me for this because I kind of embarrass her. But I was like, come on, buddy. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Keep going. And then all of a sudden, the other parents realize, hey, somebody's still out there in the field. And they're like, come on, man. Come on, go. And he looks up, and his eyes brighten, and he starts running. And we're cheering, and we're clapping like he's going to win first place. And finally, he gets there with all the other kids, and he's celebrating. I mean, it was incredible. That doesn't happen without presence. It doesn't happen without presence. If that kid's parents aren't there, it makes a difference. If I'm not there, it makes a difference. If my child's not there, it makes a difference. And when you're not here, when you're not with the gathered body of Christ, it makes a difference. And please hear me, because I'm not trying to shame anyone. I'm not trying to play the shame game here and judge people, okay? I'm not trying to do that. But hear me. Your presence matters. Your presence matters. We need you. We need each other because each of our presence in this gathering is encouraging the person next to you. I don't know if you guys over here know this, but you're encouraging to all the people who are on this side who are oblivious of you. And you guys over here, your presence matters to all the people over here and everybody in between. Y'all back there in the tech booth, your presence matters. Okay? And like, I'm not sure, we'll get kind of crazy now. Our presence matters to all the people that get up early and worship in first service. Our presence matters to them. And their presence, it matters to us. And our presence matters to the kids over in the other building. And their presence matters to us. Our students who gather on Wednesdays, their presence matters to us and to them and to our kids. And it matters to all the connection groups. All the connection groups, their presence matters to us, and we matter to them. You matter the person next to you, especially in times of unrest, because your presence says, keep going. Your presence says, you're not alone. Your presence says, I'm with you. I'm praying for you. I will help you if you need it. We need each other if we're going to keep going with all that's going on in the world. We need each other.